Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining this live session. Today's topic is how to organize a Microsoft Fabric lakehouse using the medallion architecture design. So if you have ever opened a lakehouse and found 40 tables with names nobody remembers, then this session is for you. A quick note on the format before we start. This session is theory. I want you to understand the pattern, the decisions behind it, and the reasons those decisions matter. Because once you understand the reasoning, the clicking is easy. In the next session, I will demonstrate that is going to happen after this session, something like in next 70 minutes. I will demonstrate the whole thing as a hands-on lab inside Fabric. So let me just share my screen. I have to be sure that everything is okay, just from sharing point of view. Okay. So if you are just watching live, put your questions in the chat as we go, and I will stop and read them between sections. Okay. A few words about myself before just we start. So you know where the material is coming from. My name is Ilgar Zarbaliev, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in two categories: data platform and Microsoft 365 apps and services, which is, in my case, means Power BI and Excel, right? Once again, I have to be sure that everything's okay. Okay. And I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I serve as MCT community lead. And I'm also a Microsoft certified educator and a Microsoft Innovative Educator expert. Last but not least, I'm Microsoft Fabric super user. Alongside that, I founded the Azerbaijan Data and AI community, where we run meetups, study groups, and Excel competitions. The reason I mention all of this is not the badge. It's that most of what I will show you today comes from teaching this material to people who then have to go back to work and build something that survives contact with real data. Okay, so here is our route for today. We start with why this pattern exists at all. Because the medallion architecture solves a specific problem and it's worth naming that problem first. Then we go through the three layers: bronze, silver, and gold, and what each one is for. In the second part, we make it concrete in Fabric. There are three decisions you have to make, and I will walk through each one. Third, we look at how the gold layer is served, the SQL Analytics endpoint and Power BI semantic models. And we finish with security and governance, which is the part people usually postpone and later regret. Everything today is slides and explanation. The lab comes next session. Before the new material, a short recap of where we finished last time. In the previous session, we created the Fabric workspace and the lakehouse inside it. We looked at OneLake and at the Lakehouse Explorer. So you saw the two areas every lakehouse has: files and just, tables. We uploaded raw files into the files area, then loaded them into Delta tables. And then we queried those tables using the SQL Analytics endpoint, which gave us our first look at reading lakehouse data from T-SQL. The important idea from that session is that a lakehouse holds files and tables together in one place. And everything you load becomes a delta table. Today, we take that same lakehouse and give it a structure. If you missed the previous session, the recording is available on my YouTube channel. And you will still be able to follow today because this part is conceptual. Let's start with part one, what the medallion architecture actually is. Picture a normal organization. Sales transactions arrive from one system, clickstream events from another, product catalog updates from a third, different formats, different arrival rates, different levels of quality. Now put all of that into a lakehouse with no plan. Look at the left side of the slide. Analysts end up spending more time cleaning than analyzing. Two reports built from the same lakehouse disagree with each other because each analyst cleaned the data slightly differently. Once numbers in reports disagree, confidence in the whole platform starts to erode. And that's very hard to win back. And when a transformation turns out to be wrong, you have no clean copy to go back to. So you have to ask the source system for the data again. The right side is what the medallion architecture gives you. One clear path from raw ingestion to analytics ready data. Every layer with a defined purpose and a defined audience. Teams stop overwriting each other's work because they're not all working in the same place and because you always keep the raw data. You reprocess from bronze instead of going back to the source. One more thing worth saying. This is not a Microsoft invention. It's an industry standard pattern, and it maps naturally onto Fabric because the Fabric Lakehouse is built on Delta Lake. This is the pattern in one picture. And if you remember one slide from today, remember this one. On the left, here, source data arriving in different shapes. Documents, so databases, tables, and also streaming and cloud sources. On the right, the consumers, data science reporting, and dashboards. In between, three layers. Bronze holds raw data. Silver holds validated data. Gold holds enriched modeled data. Look at the bar along the bottom. So data quality increases as you move from left to right. That's the whole idea. You do not clean everything in one heroic step. You improve the data progressively. And at every stage, you know exactly what you are holding. The other thing to notice is the audience. Bronze is for data engineers. Silver is for analysts and data scientists. Gold is the business users. That separation is what makes the pattern powerful because each team gets what it needs without anybody overwriting what others depend on. Bronze first. Bronze is the landing zone. Every kind of data lands here, structured, semi-structured, unstructured. Okay? Files, tables, JSON, logs, whatever arrives. The key rule is that Bronze stores data in its original format with no modification, no cleaning, no renaming, no filtering. When people first hear this, they find it uncomfortable. Why would I deliberately keep messy data? Because Bronze is your insurance policy If a transformation downstream turns out to be wrong, and it will happen, you reprocess from bronze. Without bronze, your only option is to go back to the source system and ask for historical extract. And anyone who has made that request knows how the conversation goes. And the audience matters. Bronze is a data engineering area. Business users should not be building reports on bronze. If they are, something has gone wrong in the design. Silver is where the data actually gets better. Three kinds of work happen here. First, you combine and merge data from several bronze sources, so the customer from the CRM extract and the customer from the transaction system become one thing. Second, you enforce data quality rules. Remove nulls, deduplicate records, drop rows that are missing a key you need. Third, you standardize formats, dates stored as real dates, regions in consistent casing, currencies in one convention. The goal is that a column means the same thing wherever you find it. The result is a consistent, integrated dataset. And note that Silver is already useful on its own. Analysts and data scientists can work directly from Silver. It's not only a staging area on the way to gold, it's a product in itself. And it also needs the gold layer. Gold is where the data is shaped for the business. The common pattern is a star schema. Fact tables in the middle, dimension tables around them, aggregated to the grain that reporting needs. If you have built Power BI models before, this will feel familiar because it's the same modeling discipline. The consumers are analysts, running reports, data scientists, building models, and business users exploring dashboards. By the time data reaches gold, nobody should need to know how messy the data source was. Now the point on the white card, which people often miss. The shape of gold depends on who is consuming it. A finance team may want pre-aggregated summaries. A data science team may want a flat, white table optimized for feature engineering. Those are different shapes and that's fine. You can have more than one gold layer. Same silver data underneath. Each gold layer modeled for its own audience. That's a much better answer than arguing about which model is correct. Before we move into fabric, one caution. 3 layers is starting point, not a rule handled down from above. Depending on your use case, you might add a landing zone before bronze for data that arrives in a particular format and needs a holding area first. Or you might add a domain-specific layer beyond gold for one team's particular needs. The names are flexible too. I have seen raw, cleansed, and curated. I have seen teams add a platinum layer, which usually means somebody has run out of metals. What actually matters is not the number of layers or their names. It's that each layer has a clear purpose and a clear audience. If you cannot say in one sentence who a layer is for, you do not need that layer. Part two, you understand the pattern. So now let's make it concrete in Fabric. 3 decisions shape your implementation. And the rest of this part follows these 3. First, how the lakehouse itself is structured. One lakehouse, several lakehouses, or several workspaces. Second, which tools move and transform data through each layer. Fabric gives you more than one option and they are not interchangeable. Third, how the gold layer is served to the people who consume it. Get this through right, and the implementation is mostly mechanical. Session 1, structure. You can put all three layers in a single lakehouse, or give each layer its own lakehouse, or go further and give each layer its own workspace. The trade-off is always the same: simplicity on one side, isolation on the other. A single lakehouse with schemas is the simplest. Schemas are enabled by default when they create a lakehouse in Fabric. So you create schemas named bronze, silver, and gold, and your tables are grouped by layer. It keeps things easy to discover, and it still lets you set different permissions per layer without managing several lakehouses for smaller teams and early stage projects. And this is usually where I start. Separate lakehouses give you a clearer separation and permissions applied per layer at item level. Separate workspaces give the strongest isolation. Each layer has its own capacity, its own role assignments, and a clear ownership boundary. If you are in a regulated environment or compliance requires a hard boundary between raw and curated data, this is the option. The cost is more workspaces to manage. There is no universally correct answer here. There is only the answer that matches your team size and your compliance requirements. This is what the single lakehouse option looks like in practice. Look at the Explorer on the left here. One lakehouse called medallion. Under tables, you can see the schemas. This is medallion lakehouse, bronze, gold, and silver. With these layers are with tables grouped underneath each one. Bronze has the raw sales table. Silver has the cleaned version. Gold has the dimension and fact tables. Notice how much this does for you at no cost. Anyone opening this lakehouse understands the design in about 3 seconds. Tables are discoverable. The layer is obvious from the name, and you can apply different permissions per schema. Also, notice the files area at the bottom with a bronze folder. Files and tables live side by side, which is exactly what we saw in the previous session. This is the layout we'll build together in the lab next time. Session 2, part 1. How data actually gets into bronze. It depends on where the data lives now. If your source is already in cloud storage, and that means OneLake, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, Amazon S3, or Google Cloud Storage, use a OneLake shortcut. Shortcut references the data in place. There is no copy, no pipeline, and no ingestion code. And your bronze layer stays in sync with the source automatically. When people see this working for the first time, the usual reaction is that it feels like cheating. It's not. It's just OneLake doing its job. For every other source, a database, an API, and on-premise system, you use pipelines, data flows, or notebooks to load the data in. Either way, the rule from earlier still applies. Whatever arrives, keep it as it arrived. Session 2, part 2. Moving data from bronze into silver. Fabric gives you 3 options. First, data flow Gen 2, that are the low-code option. They work well for straightforward transformations, filtering, renaming columns, changing data types. If your team comes from a Power Query background, they will be productive immediately. Notebooks give you full control with Python or SQL. This is the right choice for large datasets. Complex logic, custom calculations, API calls, or anything a data flow cannot express. Materialized lake views are the newest option and the most interesting one. You define the transformation in SQL, you describe what the silver table should look like, and Fabric creates and maintains the table for you. These are not ranked. I have seen teams use all three in the same solution, and that's a perfectly reasonable outcome. Choose per transformation, not per organization. Let's look at a materialized lake view properly. Because the behavior is genuinely different from a normal view. Read the sequel on the left. We are creating a view called silver here. Silver cells. So silver sales, silver dot sales, right? We select the order ID, customer ID as there. We standardize the region by trimming the white space and putting it into uppercase, right? Upper as region, okay? We we cast the order date to a real date type. Cast order date as date, right? Also, we calculate total amount as unit price times quantity. Unit price times quantity as total amount. And we filter out any row with a missing order ID, where order ID is not null. That's the classic silver work in 9 lines. Standardized formats. Derive what you need. Drop what fails the quality rule. Now the important part on the right. A regular SQL view reruns its query every time somebody queries it. A materialized lake view saves the results as a real table. And here is why that matters in Fabric. All Fabric tables are stored in Delta format, and Delta tracks every change as it happens. So when new rows arrive in bronze, Fabric checks that change log and updates only the rows that changed. It does not reprocess the entire table. The table stays current on its own with nothing to schedule and nothing to trigger. The trade-off is honest and simple. The logic has to be expressible in SQL. If you need Python, use a notebook instead. By the way, Gold is built with exactly the same three tools, coordinated by pipelines. Nothing new to learn from that layer. Part 3. Data is organized and refined. So now let's make it accessible. The first way to consume Gold is the SQL Analytics endpoint. And this is a screenshot of it. Every lakehouse has one automatically. Anyone on the team who knows SQL gets direct access to the Gold layer. Write this T-SQL queries, save functions, generate views, apply SQL security. All of it without moving the data anywhere or building a separate query layer. On the left, you can see the same medallion lakehouse, this time through the SQL endpoint, with the Gold schema expanded. So the dimension tables and the fact tables are, just located under these tables. The query is about as simple as it gets. Selecting the top 10 rows from the Gold fact table, and the results come back underneath. Yeah. One important detail to remember, the SQL Analytics endpoint works in read-only mode over the Lakehouse Delta tables. You query, you do not write. Writing is the job of your pipelines, notebooks, and views. If your team primarily works in SQL and wants write access, that's the case where a Fabric data warehouse can serve as the Gold layer instead of lakehouse. The second way is consume gold is a Power BI semantic model, which is what you see here in a model view. You create it from the lakehouse by selecting a new semantic model and choosing which call tables to include. Here, you can see the result. The gold fact table in the middle with the customer, product, and date dimensions around it. A clean star schema exactly as we described earlier. Reports connect to the semantic model, not directly to the raw data tables. That gives you one business-friendly layer with agreed measures and consistent terminology, which is how you stop two reports from disagreeing. And here is the part worth emphasizing. Semantic models connect to a gold layer using direct lake mode. Direct Lake reads the Delta files in OneLake directly instead of importing a copy into Power BI. So your reports always show current data with no separate refresh step to schedule and no refresh failure to explain on a Monday morning. You get import-like performance while reading live from OneLake. For anyone who has spent years managing refresh schedule, this is the change that matters most. Part 4, and this is the one people postpone, security and governance. Note that the medallion architecture has already created a natural access boundary for you. Data engineers work in bronze and silver. Analysts and business users consume gold. The design gives you the boundary, but you still have to enforce it. Fabric gives you two levels of control. Workspace and item permissions come first. Workspace roles, admin, member, contributor, and viewer, apply to everything in that workspace. Item permissions are more targeted, so you can share a single lakehouse with a colleague without giving them the entire workspace. If you need stronger isolation, put each layer in its own workspace, as we discussed earlier. Own capacity, own roles, clear ownership at the cost of more workspaces to manage. Before, role is the one I would highlight. OneLake data access roles give you granular control inside a single lakehouse without separate workspace at all. You scope a role to specific tables or folders. So a gold layer consumer can query gold tables but cannot see bronze or silver. One warning that cuts people out. Every lakehouse comes with a built-in default reader role that grants all read-all users access to all data. If you leave it untouched, your careful layer separation may not be doing what you think it's doing. Modify it or delete it to restrict default access. To configure this, you open the lakehouse and select Manage OneLake Security, then create a role, define its scope, and assign members. We will do this in the lab study. The last piece is change management, and this is genuinely part of the architecture, not an afterthought. A medallion architecture is code, pipeline definitions, notebook transformations, schema definitions, all of which have to stay in sync without version control. One bad deployment can corrupt data in the middle of a layer with no straightforward way back. Fabric's Git integration connects your workspace to a Git repository. So notebooks, pipelines, and lakehouse definitions are versioned alongside each other. Teams work in branches and merge through pull requests. The same workflow application developers have used for years. And if a transformation change breaks the silver layer, you revert to the previous commit instead of repairing data by hand at 11 at night. Deployment pipelines take it further. You promote your medallion workspace from development to test to production in a controlled sequence, and you can compare environments to catch differences between before they reach production data. If you take one governance habit away from today, make it this one. Connect to workspace to Git on day one, not after the first incident. Let's bring it together. Bronze keeps raw data as your source of truth. So you can always reprocess without going back to the workspace, source system. Silver validates, cleans, and integrates, producing a consistent dataset that analysts can use directly. Gold models data for business consumption, usually as a star schema, and you can have more than one gold layer for different audiences. Structure is a choice. Schemas in one lakehouse for simplicity. Separate lakehouse or workspace when you need isolation. Gold is served through the SQL Analytics endpoint for SQL users and through a Power-based semantic model with direct lake for report consumers. And finally, secure by layer with OneLake data access roles and version everything just to Git. If you can explain these 6 points to a colleague tomorrow, you have got what this session was for. So what happens next? This session was deliberately theory only because the decisions are the hard part and the clicking is the easy part. In the next session, I will demonstrate the whole thing as a live lab in Fabric. We will create bronze, silver, and gold schemas in a single lakehouse. We will land raw data in bronze using a shortcut for one source and a pipeline for another. We will clean data into silver, first with a notebook and then with a materialized lake view. So you can compare the two approaches differently. We will model the gold layer as a star schema with facts and dimensions. And we will query it from the SQL Analytics endpoint and build a direct lake report on top. If you want to follow along live, come with a Fabric trial or a workspace on a Fabric capacity ready. So you are not setting that up while I'm building. The date and joining link will be posted on my LinkedIn and in the community channel. Once again, I'm going to do it in next 45 minutes. That's everything for today. Thank you for spending this time with me. If the session was useful, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get the lab session, and please leave a comment with the part you want me to go deeper on. I read all of them and they genuinely shape what I record next. You can find me on LinkedIn, and if you are in Azerbaijan or the region, join the Azerbaijan Data and AI community. We run meetups, study groups, and competitions, and everything is free. I will stay on for a couple of seconds to answer questions if there is in the chat. So see you in the lab session. I don't see any question in the chat. Thus, so I'm going to stop sharing. Right, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to end this session and see you in next 45 minutes.